Without any further delay, let's call our next speaker, Mr. Ryan Foncannon, Managing Director at S.W.A.N Virtual Family Office, and our silver sponsor, who will address the topic estate planning in 2022 and beyond. How to prepare for what's ahead. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can everybody hear me okay? All right, perfect. I know this is kind of like the slot that people don't want to be speaking at because everybody's got a food coma. The food was really good at lunch. I'm sure everybody got a little bit extra and everything. So I hope I don't bore you to death. If you don't laugh at my jokes, it's okay. My wife doesn't either, so it's all good. We're going to talk about something that's not very exciting. It's what people are going to do with your crap when you're gone. So, all right. So I know this is a Law 2.0, and I was a little disappointed that there wasn't more disclaimers in some of the speeches earlier, but so people know this is for informational purposes only, educational. You're not going to be able to run home and implement a lot of this stuff. I know this is a little bit longer than a TikTok. I know not as informational, not as great information and everything. So just to let you know on that. A little bit about me. I'm the managing partner of the S.W.A.N Virtual Family Office. S.W.A.N actually stands for Sleep Well at Night. I will get a little bit more into what we do and what we do. A little bit more about me. A little bit more known as a nationally recognized tax strategist. What does that mean? What we do is we don't do a whole lot of tax preparation, but we'll take a look at like someone's business return and or their personal / joint return. Some people know that as a 1040. Some people know that as a joint return, whatever. And we look to see how we can improve that. I live in Evansville, Indiana, really small town, right across from Kentucky. So if you can hear my accent a little bit, that's where it comes from. But you have to breed that out of me, apparently. Married, don't have any kids. We've got a cat and a dog. The dog's about this big and the cat's about this big. He's not missed any treats in about 12 years. So let's get into more fun stuff. Estate planning 101. Who actually here has an up-to-date estate plan? Up to date. Now, you may have an estate plan, but is it up to date? And that's usually like a big issue, especially, mixed, blended families. You've got new kids, grandchildren happen, and different things like that. So that's right at the very basic part of estate planning is just making sure that you have an up-to-date estate plan. And then how many people here have like sufficient life insurance to cover liabilities or whatever you need it to cover? It could be burial, it could be paying off the house, allowing the kids to go to college. So that's kind of like what we kind of call estate planning 101. So now to get a little bit more advanced stuff, I think this is something that a lot of people do not know. I think people have heard that the state tax exemption is going to get cut in half in 2026. But leading up to that, people do not know that they can actually opt out of paying estate taxes with proper planning. Now, there's not a checkbox on your tax return. A lot of people think that, but with proper planning, you can achieve that. And we'll get into more like what that proper planning does. It has a lot of different layers to it. So this is a piece of the more advanced planning that we do, that we bring to the table, is a leveraged premium finance. And what that is, we use it as a mega Roth alternative, use it as a super Roth, super backdoor Roth alternative. It's been called a lot of different things. There's a lot of different variations of this. This is just talking about one variation that I like a lot because it's just kind of easy to talk about without getting into the weeds. No credit checks, no interest payments, no personal guarantees, no loan documents. And the neat thing that I like about it has a 3-to-1 leverage on it. So there's a lot of people out there paying quite a bit in premiums for life insurance, but they didn't know that if they brought a financer like a bank to the table, that they can match and even give you a 3-to-1 financing. So what does that mean? So let's say you got a 5-year plan. The bank's going to match your premium payment the first 5 years. Then after that, the bank's going to pick up your payment and still keep paying their payment. So let's just say the payment's $25,000 and $25,000. So $50,000 is going into the policy per year. You're done paying after 5 years. The bank picks up your payment for the next 5 years. And I think people kind of understand it. Well, guys understand smokers, and women kind of understand crock pots a little bit better. So it's the longer it cooks, the better it's going to be. So it needs to cook for at least 15 years. Then after 15 years, you can start pulling out income tax-free via loans and everything. Now, a little bit more of a higher level is the premium funded. Now, the premium funded's very similar where the bank's going to be brought in, but it's not just a bank. Sometimes it's a financer that brings money to the table. And the neat thing is the client is not paying any premiums into this. So very usually higher net worth people will get into this. It's usually a lot easier for people to do this when they're probably estate is probably $10 million or more. And a little bit, who this is good for, net worth of $10 million or more, person's insurable, collateralizes security assets in the portfolio, really great for real estate investors. Real estate investors don't like to keep a lot of cash laying around. They get some cash, they're already thinking about the next property they're putting it into. So this is a great way to bring this type of planning to the table for estate planning for people like real estate investors, but also collateralize accounts receivable, really great for surgeons. Put a lien against the accounts receivable. Now we're talking about asset protection. Also collateralize an endowment. I don't know if there's any football fans in the audience, but I know Jim Harbaugh at Michigan actually has this type of policy that was set up through the university through their endowment. So let's talk about bagels and mayo. And you're probably like, what does bagels and mayo have to do with estate planning? So I was dealing with a little bit more of the advanced concepts of Section 162. Section 162 is dealing with Linders Bagels family and Hellman Mayo. And what that did is created the opportunity to create family office structures. Now, why is the family office structure important? Section 162 allows you to deduct the expenses of managing all those assets in that family office structure, which also brings, in English, more deductions for your client that maybe have a very high net worth that maybe they're not already taking. So this is our setup. So we're a virtual family office. People might know the Rockefellers were the first family to actually have a family office. They hired attorneys, tax pros, wealth management, insurance, real estate people all in-house. So our concept is we have access to probably 70 different specialists nationally, and they're all at the top of their field. So it could be tax attorneys, could be specialized deductions for high-wage W-2 earners, could be tax credits, could be income-producing assets with huge tax incentives built into it. And kind of our structure is the risk management, tax planning, wealth management, business advisory, legal services. And what we do is, kind of like what I said before, is that we take a look at the actual tax return, could be the business return, could be the personal return, and we see what we can do to make it better. And oftentimes, probably 9.9 times out of 10, if they qualify, we can do something. So here's the sample of a family office planning structure, kind of basic. You've got the family members, you've got the trust. The big piece is the management company and the FLLC, and that's where the Section 162 comes into play in terms of managing the assets. Then you've got the real estate holdings, you've got the different businesses, LLCs, S-corps. You've got the risky assets put into LLCs. So when we're talking about estate planning, we're also talking about entity optimization in terms of asset protection. You've got that crazy son that has that sports car that drives crazy. You put that puppy in an LLC. So this is getting a little bit deeper, a little bit wider. And every structure of these is going to be different depending on the assets that the client has. So we're still talking about asset protection. We're talking about real estate holdings. We're talking about a gift trust. Talking about descendants, generational wealth planning, different types of property. Now this one, now we're getting into some more fun stuff, at least to me. Probably not to you, but to me. We've got some international planning, so they got an international LLC. They got foreign real estate in an LLC. They've got foreign businesses. We've structured private placement life insurance within this structure. We may be talking about an offshore asset protection trust. So we're trying to protect assets that are overseas from coming back and biting them over here, and then we're going to protect stuff that's here from affecting things that are overseas. So very dynamic. Still have the family office and the family holding company. Structure number 3. This one's kind of dealing with a company that's here in the United States, a manufacturing company. But something that's unique about them is that they're a C Corp, and they do a lot of business internationally, not just nationally. So that also brings into the IC, it's called an IC DISC, and it's actually a little known tax strategy in terms of like a company that's exporting that the government gives incentives to be able to compete on an international level. And then you've also got the family office structure, the different charitable planning. We've got a foundation built into this. There's probably 10 to 12 to 15 different types of charitable structures that can be built into this. So everything's kind of very much tailored to the client and their needs and wants. And the big thing is just the assets. And it's really about, when you get into like really high level estate planning, you're talking about asset protection, you're talking about risk management, you're talking about tax planning, you're talking about generational wealth. And all these things start layering on top of each other. Example 4, this is probably the most dynamic one. They've got quite a bit of the real estate holdings. They've got some stuff that's international, then also national. You still have the management company, building in different types of trusts, building in the foundation, building in life insurances. Some are for income, some are for the estate planning, some are for the generational wealth, some are used, there's different types of trusts and also entities that can be used for discounting, for passing assets on to the other generations and everything. And that's my contact information. We've actually got a new updated website coming. It was supposed to be done by today. It wasn't. Technology always takes longer than it's supposed to. But SWANVFO.com, email info@SWANVFO.com. I think I wasn't sure how fast I was going to get through this or not. One other thing that I think is really big for like the estate planning today is like a SNT, which is a special needs trust. There's lots of kids with autism, different issues and everything, and I think a lot of people are looking for something for their child, or maybe it's a grandchild, to do some estate planning, and I think that's a little nugget that like a lot of people don't know about. There's 3 different types of them. So I was also going to see if anybody had any questions. A lot of that's kind of really high level. Yeah. Oh.
Great presentation, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Question is, what is a Genesis trust? Have you heard of that? Like a trust used for international assets that you're trying to protect?
I'm not necessarily familiar with the Genesis Trust. I'd have to look into that a little bit. But there's lots of different types of international trusts. There's a Nevis trust. Do you think maybe it's a Nevis trust? So there's a Nevis that's like the LLC that's done in the Caribbean. And then layering that also in with like a Cook Islands trust, which is a very unique strategy because someone has to fly to New Zealand, get on a boat to go to the Cook Island to then file a way to like sue you. So it's like filing a lawsuit. So you actually have to go there and you have to spend all that money. And that's even if you can figure out that the trust is actually set up there, is the other part of it. So it's like when you start layering in like really big, I think, estate planning, it's the asset protection component. The harder you make it for someone to sue you, the better, that's a win-win for the client. And if they got to expend, 30 to 50K before they even figure out where the assets are, That's a huge win. Because you just get rid of a lot of the frivolous crap out there.
And then lastly,
Yeah.
in terms of international, by it being overseas, how does that protect you from other jurisdictions around the country?
Yeah, that's
in terms of
that's a
those
good question. Absolutely, yep. And that's where, and I'm not an attorney, so I'm not going to sit here and say that I know everything. I would definitely defer to I've got a couple of attorneys that do quite a bit of planning internationally, quite a bit. I think they were telling me about a case that they had, like generational wealth. They were, $4 billion with a family from Israel. Part of the family lived in Brazil, part lived in the United States, part lived in Australia. And the dynamics of the different jurisdictions, like you were saying, kind of depends on, I think also where things are domiciled. But yeah, it's kind of like getting all the info. That's really a big fact finder in terms of okay, where are things at now, and then where can we maybe improve upon what's going on. And that's where maybe we talk about, I'd say, entity optimization in terms of diversification, in terms of where your different assets in what states. So then you get on an international level, it's okay, I don't have all my assets in Indiana, because it'd be very easy for someone to figure out how to sue me, because all my assets are listed right there in Indiana. So it's talking about diversification of where the entities are located, and then you get on an international level, then you can kind of start layering it around and seeing what jurisdictions probably have the best charging orders. And that's where the Cook Islands is probably at the top of the list, but there's some places in the Caribbean that are really good. There's some that I think the government kind of maybe isn't real happy about. So, it's kind of playing with that fine line of what's legal that I can do and then what's not. That's kind of in the gray area of the government. So that's where it's important to have somebody that does that on a regular basis and just not, I'm going to do a Google search and tell you what you want to hear kind of thing. At least from our experience and everything. We actually had a family, very successful day trader, and she started a coaching program, and she was from Nigeria, and then her dad still lived there, but her mom they were divorced, and her mom lived here in the States. So the daughter was also a partial owner of the chicken farm in Nigeria, so we had to do some planning with that. So it was very interesting, and then the mom didn't want to be involved with that, and that was a whole different story, but very, very interesting. And then she ended up moving to Puerto Rico because of the federal taxes are a lot cheaper there than here in the actual continental United States. Yeah, there's all kinds of interesting things they can do with advanced planning and estate planning, and how things just start kind of layering over each other. They start blending together and everything. Yeah. If anybody had anything else? All right. I think I'm right on time. Perfect. My wife is going to be disappointed. I proved her wrong. All right, thank you all very much. I appreciate it.